Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I am your host, JR. I am joined by Alec Whitaker from the Booze, Bets, and Ball Penn State podcast. And we have another guest joining us, Hawk Guy Matt from Twitter and Message Board Geniuses. So we're going to go ahead and take a moment, let these guys plug their socials, tell you where they're from. So that way, if you like what you hear, you can go check them out. Alec, you want to go first?
Yeah, so if you want to follow the podcast on Twitter, it's at 3BPodPSU. And then on YouTube, you can find us under Whitaker Media, my last name there, and then Media, because we do some other stuff on there, some baseball stuff. So there's all kinds of good stuff there. And then if you're looking up the podcast on a podcast platform, it's going to be Booze, Bets, and Ball, a Penn State football podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for plugging those things, Alec. Appreciate that. And now you can hear from Matt. Like I said, he is from Twitter, Message Board Geniuses. Matt, you want to go ahead and plug where people can find you at?
Well, sure. You can find me at Hawkeye Matt on Twitter. In addition to that, if you don't find me on Message Board Geniuses, I promise I'll find you.
There we go. That's the way we like it. Message Board Geniuses is one of my Twitter accounts that I like to follow the most.
Yeah, definitely.
Except when they post about my team, and then I'm like, oh, geez, there are fans like that on my team. So you guys do good work there, Matt.
Appreciate it.
All right. If you've been watching this podcast for a while, you know we are brought to you by Big Banter Sports. Big Banter Sports is a Big Ten sports media group. We have a podcast, one podcast for every single college football team in the Big Ten. We are working on getting college basketball done, so you can check that out in the coming weeks as we look forward to college basketball. But for now, we're paying attention to football, so check them out there. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on podcasts, please follow those channels and give us a rating too. We'd appreciate it. And if there's anything we mentioned that you want to comment on, or maybe you disagree with us on, please do comment on the YouTube video. Let us know. Or if you're listening on podcast, you can find us on Twitter. Go reply to our tweet there and let us know how you feel as well. So what we're going to get into first is the Penn State and Illinois game coming up this weekend. Penn State and Illinois, it's going to be a noon game. Penn State is at Illinois, so there is a little bit of some interest there to see what could happen, to see if Drew Aller will be able to go on the road in the Big Ten and look just as impressive as he already has. The game is currently set at 14.5 in favor of Penn State. We'll let Alec go first on this. Alec, in this game, what are some matchups in favor of or against Penn State that you're really looking forward to in this game?
Yeah, I think it starts with the interior of Illinois' defensive line, obviously Newton and Randolph in the middle there. Penn State lost their projected starting left guard, Landon Tangwell, medical retirement before the season. Hunter Norris at the center was actually kind of banged up last week. Wasn't announced with the starters, then played the first drive and didn't play the rest of the game. I'm not sure what that was all about, but he's a little banged up, I think. So they're kind of still piecing together on the interior there. I know we did our Illinois preview with Sonny from the Illini cast last night, and he was talking about how they're kind of underwhelmed with how those guys have looked so far. I thought they looked kind of decent getting after the passer against Kansas. Newton had 2 sacks. I think he could have had 2 more, but Daniels, the Kansas quarterback, a really good athlete, escaped a couple. So I don't know if Aller gets out of those plays the way Daniels did. So I am looking for maybe not so much in the run game, but an interior pass rush of Illinois versus the interior of the Penn State offensive line, which we know the tackles are pretty good, but the interior, I think, is still where a lot of people are, questioning some things with the Penn State offensive line.
For sure. And I think it'll be a really good battle in the trenches there because, as we know, Penn State had a lot of hype going into the year. And not that they've looked bad by any means, but, like you said, it's just you lose some pieces. You got some guys banged up. It's not exactly what you would expect for the year. And Illinois, though their defensive line has the stronghold of their team, they've been minimized a bit this year. Kansas minimized them some, and Toledo actually did a little bit too. But don't sleep on Toledo. They're a really good MAC team. I know they're a MAC team, but still a good MAC team that should be recognized. Matt, what are you thinking about this game? What matchups should you be looking for in this one?
I'm just taking a page from what Kansas did to them, and I don't think you can really say this all that often, but Kansas looked fast against somebody. I mean, it was kind of insane. And you compare that with what Penn State has, specifically their running backs. I don't think this is going to be all that close, to be honest. And this is coming from somebody that is embarrassed to have actually picked Illinois to win this game in the preseason. I take a look at what they've done, and I just don't see how they slow Penn State down. Their skill players are probably amongst the best of what they've had under Franklin. The two running backs they've got, I'm not sure there's too many teams that have better, maybe Michigan, but I think Illinois is really, really going to struggle keeping it in check with that running game of Penn State.
For sure, yeah. Penn State has a high-powered offense, and though the offensive line, like we said, hasn't been exactly what people expect, Drew Aller has been what they expect and more, and those running backs are just as good as everybody thought they might be. Now, the stats might not blow you away, but I mean, they are a very good team, and they've shown that time in and time again. Well, Alec, if you were going to be picking a score for this game, predicting the score in some way, shape, or form, what would your score prediction be?
Yeah, Illinois has given up 31 points a game after they gave up, I think, around 12 last year. Obviously, Toledo and Kansas, maybe better teams than a lot of people are giving them credit for, but I don't think overall talent-wise, they're in the same ballpark as Penn State. I'd be surprised if Penn State put up less than 30 in this game. The Illinois offense, it's a lot different than even the offense they had last year where Chase Brown ran the ball 40 times a game. Luke Altmaier could do some different things. I'm interested to see how he looks. So I would say I think Penn State covers. I would probably go 35-17, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I like that prediction. I was actually thinking somewhere around the same thing. I was thinking maybe about 31-14, somewhere in that range. But I'm with you. I feel like they're going to be able to get to 30, and if garbage time they really can pull away, they might even get up near or above 40 as well. Matt, what are your thoughts on the score predictions?
38-13. I don't think it's going to be all that close. I think I appreciate a Penn State fan actually giving a little bit of apprehension, but not on this one, man.
Yeah, for sure. I think Illinois had some high expectations going into the season. Like you said, Matt, you chose them to win outright, right?
I did. I actually had them winning the West, and I'm not sure that was a good pick.
Well, I said in the last podcast that we had with Aaron and Verts, I said the West is the most competitive division in all of college football. That doesn't mean it's the best. That doesn't mean it's the worst. It just means it's the most competitive because you could pick any of those teams, and honestly, they have a really good chance to win the West, it feels like. The East kind of has their Ohio State, their Penn State, and Michigan, and it seems like it's going to be one of those three, almost, 99% chance that it would be. But, Iowa looks good. Wisconsin has had some sparks, but they lost last week, so it's a really interesting one. So let's go ahead and move on. We will get into some Iowa football now. This is what Matt loves to talk about. Matt, of course, huge Iowa fan, hot guy Matt. Brian Ferentz finds himself in a bit of a situation here. He needs 325 points in order to meet his agreement on his contract. Well, the first week they played Utah State and he got 24. And the next week they played, who was it? Iowa State. That's right. Oh no, I forgot that. Iowa State, and they got 20. So 25 is kind of what they need to average per game to get there. Matt, you tell me, what are your thoughts regarding this agreement and the whole idea of Brian Ferentz possibly getting there?
I'll start by saying this. Last year, this time, we had a total of 14 points. That's not an average. That's 14 points between the two games. So I don't know. 22 is actually an improvement on what we're used to. That said, look, I'm not going to tell you that this contract actually made all that much sense. If you're winning, that's all that should matter. A 25-point average, and I think you actually had this on one of the things that you sent me. Purdue actually averaged less than that last year when they won the West, right?
Yep, they had about 24.3, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
So it was an arbitrary number. I actually do think he's going to get there, to be really honest with you. I think that we face enough teams where we probably can get a few more than, again, we averaged 17 last year. We started averaging 7. So there's usually an improvement over the course of the season for Iowa. I think he's probably going to get there. It doesn't negate the fact that that's kind of a dumb part of the contract. It puts all the focus of what could be a really good year on 325. I don't love that, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it is just an agreement for like a salary boost or a bonus or something like that, right? It's not if you don't get here, you're fired. Is that correct?
That is not correct. It's a performance plan.
Okay.
He doesn't get there, he's fired.
Okay. All right. I thought I read something about he wouldn't get a bonus, and so I didn't know if the whole idea if you don't get it, you're still gonna be fired type of thing was connected to it. I mean, Matt, I didn't write this question down, but I am curious your thoughts. Do you think if he does not reach that and if he is fired, do you think that this will affect Kirk Ferentz's future with the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Kind of a loaded question because I think that it really depends. If we go 11-1, which obviously the loss would be to Penn State, I'm trying to give you guys credit there. And then also, also when, average 24 points or less or something like that, I don't think he's going to get fired. Yeah, despite what that contract says, and this is why I don't really like it. I think if we're winning, they're going to say, you know what, we're winning. I'm not going to fire him. If we wind up going 8-4, and this happens, then yeah, he's probably going to go. My guess would be that Kirk probably goes with him.
Yeah, that would be wild. Kirk has been there since 1999, I believe. So for his son to come in and be let go over a contract like this, that would be quite the shakeup for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Alec, you're a Penn State fan from the outside looking in. What have your thoughts been on this at the beginning and even now that he's, a few points under the barometer of where it needs to be?
Yeah, I this is one of the most interesting things I've seen in a contract. Obviously, I do have a question though, because 7 of those points came on a pick 6 last week. So does that count? Are they counting offensive points or is it overall points? Because I couldn't find that anywhere to see. Because obviously Iowa is one of the best scoring defenses in the country. They're good for a few pick 6s every year. So that could actually give him a boost if that's counted in there.
It is.
Okay, so it is.
It is counted in there. It's just overall points. And for reference, last year we actually averaged 3.5 points a game on defense.
Yeah. Wow. That's what I thought. Yeah. So that I think that might help him get there if he does get there. It's Western Michigan this week, I think. So I think that's a game they probably have to go to 40, I think, if he wants to be comfortable with this number. But yeah, I couldn't see Penn State had a similar situation, obviously, when Jay Paterno was the offensive coordinator under Joe Paterno, and the offense got stale at times. I was younger, but I still remember people complaining about how they had a lot of nice NFL talent, Derek Williams, Derek Moy, a lot of nice receivers, and they didn't put up as many points as people thought they could have. So, Penn State had a similar situation, so I see it, but to put an actual number on it, like you said, if they're 11-1, it doesn't really matter how it's done. You're winning, but to put an exact number on it is a little wild.
Yeah, that's kind of been my thoughts throughout this whole thing is it's like, yes, I understand you want to score more than 25 points per game, but at the same time, my thought is the same as Matt's. Like, if you're winning, that's what matters most. Right. And like we just pointed out here, Purdue had averaged less than that, and they won the West last year. Now, I will say, caveat, Purdue, it did drop below that after their game against Michigan and after their game against LSU combined. So, of course, they scored, I think it was 20 or 22 points against Michigan, and then, of course, the 7-point dud against LSU. So, it is kind of a, fake stat, but I guess that's my other question as well, Matt, and you might not know it, but if you do, great. If they make it to a bowl game, does the bowl game count for his total of 325, or does that just increase it to 350 and now he needs to be above that?
Well, if you do the math, 325 is actually 25. So they're actually expecting a bowl game.
Oh, through the bowl game as well. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even do the math there. I didn't think about it.
Oh, yeah, 13. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, thanks for teaching us math, Matt. I appreciate that.
Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we'll move on to our next topic then. We're just strolling right on through here, but I do think this is going to be a bit of a bigger conversation, so I'm glad we've left some time for it here. So just to set this up, the Big Ten is not the best conference in the nation right now. For years, it has been the SEC. I don't know how long you can say. I don't think in the early 2000s or they were the best. They kind of started becoming the best later in the 2000s, I feel like. But they've pretty well solidified themselves to be the best in like the past 10 or 15 years. I don't think anybody can really question that. However, this year, the SEC has struggled quite a bit. They are 1-4 against the ACC, 0-1 against the Big 12, but then here's the strange thing. They are 2-1 against the Pac-12. So everybody's looking at the Pac-12 saying you have 8 teams ranked, you're the best conference out there, but yet the SEC has a winning record against the Pac-12. Alec, what are your whole thoughts on this situation? Because the Big Ten gets 4 of these Pac-12 teams next year.
Right.
Do we see the Big Ten possibly surpassing the SEC as the best conference in 2024?
Yeah, I definitely think they have the chance to. You talked about how it seems like people this season, at least early on, have caught up to the SEC. I think NIL has played a role in that because some of these schools, like Florida State, I think has put together some nice packages after the whole losing Travis Hunter thing. I think they really stepped up their game. So it's not a surprise to see them in a better position. Obviously, USC with Lincoln Riley coming in, there's a lot more enthusiasm there. Miami, recent new head coach, some more enthusiasm there. So I think that kind of stuff is actually leveling the playing field. I think some people thought it would distance it. I think it's made more teams competitive, actually. So I think that's a reason why it's gotten a little more competitive. And then you see Clemson, who has neglected that in the transfer portal, and they're falling behind. So the schools that NIL transfer portal, you look at Florida State, USC, I don't think it's surprised they're doing a little better than they had the past 5 to 10 years before that. So I do think, though, with which schools Penn State's bringing in, obviously, I think Washington loses a lot this year with Penix and those receivers leaving after the season. So I'm interested to see how they rebound. Obviously, schools like USC and Oregon are going to recruit well no matter what. So I still think they'll be top of the line. UCLA, Dante Moore, 5-star recruit at quarterback, just a true freshman. So, he'll be competitive next couple of years in the Big Ten too. So I think with what you're seeing, I don't know, Alabama, there's some, kinks in the armor right now. It's not what it used to be. Part of that is Georgia has kind of surpassed them, but overall brand of SEC has gone down. We'll see, if Auburn comes back under Hugh Freeze now. Texas A&M is so hit or miss. We'll see. Jimbo might be gone after the year. We'll see if they hire someone new, if that changes things for them. So, those are some things I'm looking at. I think some of those borderline SEC schools that were getting away with being 8-4 and your losses were to LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, and people still thought, maybe you were the 4th or 5th best team in the country. I think those days are behind it because a lot of other places are just playing really good ball, and the portal and NIL, I think, has leveled the playing field significantly because Alabama's 3rd string really isn't 5 stars anymore. Maybe a lot of those kids are going out west for a starting job now.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the SEC is no longer getting away with paying NIL when NIL wasn't legal.
Right. Well, that too, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's always been the biggest thing is that, hey, now NIL is legal. And, from the stories we hear, and obviously nothing you can really pin down as 100%, but from the stories we hear, there's still back channel conversations happening with SEC schools that it doesn't seem like, Big Ten and Pac-12 schools can really say that they're able to do or doing as well. So it's very, very interesting. Matt, what's your thoughts on this whole Big Ten possibly surpassing the SEC in 2024?
I think I have a slightly different perspective than you guys on it. Really, what I would say is it kind of depends on if we're talking about the depth of a conference or the strength at the top. And typically speaking, when people talk about the SEC being the best, they point to Georgia. They point to Alabama. Well, guess what? We were, and I'm sorry, JR, but we were a missed field goal away from actually having that narrative being kind of snuffed last year. So,
yeah.
I mean, is it really that wide of a gap? And I understand in 2000, what was it, like 2007 when Florida went on that streak with Tebow. That might have been LSU. I can't remember.
The gap, Florida. That was the whole Swamp Kings.
That's right.
Like that.
Yeah, the gap might have been a little bit more so there because the talent was consolidated. And I agree with you that NIL has changed the equation, but let's be honest. Has Ohio State really been at worst, the third best team in the country or the second best team in the country? I mean, I would make the argument they were probably the better team last year. So when you're talking about at the top, I'm not sure that the SEC is that far ahead, if at all.
Yeah, Matt, you're preaching my language, man. I think that Ohio State was the better team, at least in that game. And if you listen to what was said afterwards by Kirby Smart, he said afterwards that Ohio State probably deserved to win that game. Now, unfortunately, Ohio State missed a kick. And there could be some arguments on if Ryan Day was too conservative at the end of the game to get closer there. But in my opinion, we're looking at 3 Big Ten teams now that I think have a solid shot of beating any team that's at the top of the SEC. I think you have Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. They could, I'm not saying they will, but you get into a playoff scenario. If you see Penn State versus Georgia, I'm confident that Penn State could win that game. I don't know if I'd pick them, but I think they could, and they would actually stand a chance. Do I think they would stand a chance last year? Maybe I might give it to them, but I mean, Alec, I guess you would probably know better than me, but that's kind of my thought as well, is that we have more teams that can compete. It's not just Ohio State now. Michigan has really leveled up. Penn State has really leveled up. And I mean, next year we might be looking at Wisconsin really leveling up as well under Luke Fickell. So, I don't know. You guys tell me, will the Pac-12 finish this year as the best conference out there? Will they finish on this run that they have with 8 teams ranked? Will they finish as the best conference out there? Alec, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think pretty much all those teams still have to play each other. So I'm interested to see how that goes out. I do think there's a chance they have 2 or 3 teams that finish with 10 plus wins. Obviously, USC is the favorite to do that. I saw some things today. Washington could backdoor to 10, even if they don't play that well. So I think they might finish the season with 2 or 3 teams in the top 10, but I could see them being left out of the playoff if, there's no perfect team that comes out of there. So I think that's usually the measuring stick for, how good you're going to be. Because I think right now everyone thinks Texas is a lock for the playoff unless they have a massive slip up, and Florida State might run away with the ACC. So that's 2 spots right there. And you think, well, obviously the Big Ten and the SEC usually outside of 2018, they didn't take the Big Ten. They didn't take a Big Ten team. I think was the last time. So they pretty much take a Big Ten and SEC team every year. So I don't know if we're going to have an Pac-12 team in the playoff. And that's usually the measuring stick here for best conference. I think a couple of those teams will fall out. I don't know if Washington State is a top 25 team. I'm just see how they hold out. So I don't think they'll finish there. I think obviously the Big Ten has a really good shot at having 3 in the top 10 too. A chance that all 3 of them are 11-1. I don't know if that'll happen, but it's possible. Thing is, I don't know anyone in the West will finish ranked. Iowa obviously has the best shot now, but I don't think it'll be the Pac-12. I'm not sure who else it might be. At the end of the day, it might still be the SEC, but I think these Pac-12 teams will beat up on each other as this goes on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Big 12 last year was kind of like that. I'm not going to say that they were, as highly skilled as the Pac-12 is this year. I think the Pac-12 is skilled more, but you had teams that were good. They just kept beating up on each other all year long. So we could run into a situation like that. Matt, your thoughts on the Big 12 or the Pac-12 finishing as the best conference this year?
Really depends on whether you're talking about depth or you're talking about at the top. And I think Alec covered depth pretty well. The one thing that I will say to him is you can't underestimate Texas's ability to choke.
That is true. Yeah.
So I mean, I understand they do look really good right this second.
Yeah.
They're not back until they actually show up in a college football playoff game and perhaps win. So, that aside, let's hypothetically say that somebody like USC or Washington or Oregon gets into a playoff game against Penn State. Would you have any hesitation behind picking Penn State in that game?
Penn State, I think, is better than all the schools, at least defensively on the trenches. USC obviously plays a fast game, but I think Utah exposed them last year in that you could beat them by being physical, and obviously Penn State made pretty quick work of Utah in the Rose Bowl. So I would take Penn State over all those teams just because I think in terms of, especially on defense, they would get the better of them.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even think twice about taking Penn State. Michigan, same thing. Well, although Michigan has the tendency of turning back into a pumpkin after Christmas, so maybe they lose that one.
Now you're preaching what I like to hear, Matt.
But seriously, you look at the Big Ten and the three teams that you had mentioned as most likely top 10 teams, they're going to beat anybody in the Pac-12. And I don't think that 1 year with a couple of transfers is going to change that. I also will say, and this is a bold prediction, whoever does wind up winning the West is going to be a 10-win team and will be ranked at the end of the season. They're going to lose badly to whatever East team actually comes out of it, but it's not going to be such a 2022 Purdue or even a 2021 Iowa situation, as much as I hate to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I always struggle with the West because, I kind of think like you do, Matt, where I say, oh, well, whoever wins, good for them, but they're just going to get beat up by the East in the championship game. And I know that sounds arrogant, but, that's kind of what I think every year. However, the other part of me says, but what year do they actually get it done? At what time do they actually get it done? And they knock out the one, maybe, or one of the two Big Ten teams that actually have a shot at the at the playoffs. Do we have a situation like TCU last year where they just kind of stay put and people say, oh, it's a fluke game? Or do you have a situation like USC last year where they say, hey, this is a major kink in their armor and we don't think they're worth it to be in the playoffs? I don't know. I think it's very, very interesting, but I tend to agree with you as well, Matt. I think the Pac-12 teams, unfortunately, there is not enough defense consistently played in that conference that if they were to face at least Penn State and Michigan, because I think those defenses are stronger. I'm still not a believer in the Ohio State defense yet. They're going to have to show it against a good team, but they are going to have to really play some strong defense against strong running games that can really gash the middle of the offensive or of the other team's defensive line, because that's just the Big Ten brand of football that is played. So yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Alec, you have any more thoughts before we move on?
No, I mean, my one thing is I hope Penn State survives this week because I'm really looking forward to week 4. The slate of games that week is going to be one of the best regular season weeks in recent memory. So just hoping to be 3-0 going into that week because I think that'll be a lot of fun with the whiteout with Iowa and then trying to find out how to watch Notre Dame and Ohio State at the same time in the stadium.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. You let me know how that goes.
I'll check.
Because I'm sure internet connection
Yeah,
and
no,
service
it's
is
gonna be
not going to be
tough.
at a
No.
premium. So, Matt, you got any more thoughts on the whole best conference?
No, but take a look within our own conference. It might be the one that actually comes out on top.
That was actually going to be my next question. Go ahead, just first thought on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think it would be that Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan all finish 11-1 and all three of them make it into the playoffs? 10 being most likely it's going to happen, 1 being it will never happen. Alec, what is your first thought in that?
The chance that they all go 11-1, I think, is maybe a 7. The chance that all three get in is probably like a negative 11. I don't see there being more than 2. I think it'd be interesting because maybe the one that wins the Big Ten, obviously, I think is in, and then maybe is it the team that beat them or the team that lost to them that they take? I'd like to see what they weigh more there. That would be the interesting discussion to me.
Yeah, I think in that situation, Penn State has a bit more of a chance because I think Penn State has a better schedule or a harder schedule than Michigan does. But Michigan's also been there, so you're right. It's kind of a toss-up between the two there. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on the scale of 1 to 10?
1. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, you guys are probably right. I'm just hopeful. All right,
it would be fun. But
it would be fun. Let me dream a little bit. So, all right. Well, hey, that's all I got for the podcast today. Thanks so much to Alec for coming on and to Matt for coming on. I appreciate you guys being here. Please remember to check them out. Alec at the Booze, Bets, and Ball Penn State podcast. You can also find them under the Whitaker Media on YouTube. And then Matt, find him at Hawkeye Matt, and then on message boards as well. And like he said, if you don't find him, he'll find you. So we're also brought to you by Big Banter Sports. Don't forget to go visit their website, bigbantersports.com. Find them on social media. Find us on social media as well. We tweet out content every day and hope you enjoy it. So my next episode, I'm very excited to say this, my next episode will feature Mark Rogers from the Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers will be here to recap week 3. Very excited for that. Very excited to have him here. And we're working on who the other guest is right now. I think it's going to be Sonny from Illinois, because Sonny has a previous relationship with Mark, but we need to confirm that. So Mark Rogers will be here nonetheless. So be sure to tune in for the week 3 recap. Thanks so much, guys, for being here, and thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have a great day.